I think it's really imperative for L&D professionals to stay on top of like what's new, what are the right tools, right? What's the better tool for infographics, stuff like that, so that you're using the right tool for the need that you have. And then you can input that into essentially like your training, right? E-learning is becoming more like irrelevant. I think it has to be that interactive, like kinesthetic learning where you have these tools that are coaching people, and it's very engaging, right? And I think that AI can do a lot around that.
What have you changed since you got more hands-on with AI for your sales team? And what is it that you're working on for the future to implement? Jen, how's it going?
It's going great. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. So how have you been?
I've been good. Yeah, just chugging along, working, living, having fun.
Having
How
fun,
about
that's a
you?
good one.
Yeah.
Pretty good, pretty good. Can't complain. It's getting a little chillier here in Canada. So winter jackets are out. Parka soon, minus 30. I'm not
Oh
looking
my
forward to
gosh.
that.
Yeah, I do not miss those days of stepping outside and like stepping in a pile of snow and thinking it's like hard and your foot just goes in and gets soaked. So yeah, it's cooler in Florida. We haven't had to quite put the pool heater on yet though. So
Yeah,
all good here.
make the rest of us jealous. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
It works. Look, super pumped having you on the show. So obviously today
I'm
we're gonna
excited to
talk.
be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. So we're gonna talk about L&D, AI, what to do differently in this era. But before getting to all that jazz, we want to get to know you a little bit more. Tell us about your background. Where have you been? What you've been doing, and what you're working on these days.
Sure. So I'm a born and raised New Yorker, grew up there, actually went to law school, wasn't really sure if I wanted to be an attorney and decided I did not want to be one. And so ended up pivoting into L&D initially in investment banking with really a focus on compliance, making sure everyone was doing what they were supposed to do. And then over time have just been in different industries, technology. I spent a lot of time in law firms because I have a law degree. So it makes a lot of sense that I can teach attorneys how to do their jobs and the support staff there. And then about 3.5 years ago, joined another tech company that was a FinTech company, and we got acquired about a year ago. And so I've been in L&D with them for 3.5 years now, and I love it. It's really like my vibe. Like I was a swim instructor growing up, and in college I was a TA. And so when I was thinking of pivoting out of law into, what's next, I just kept coming back to the idea of teaching, but I didn't want to teach children or be in like a school setting. And so corporate training was a perfect fit.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So let's get into it right away. How AI is changing the world of L&D.
So much so fast every day I'm learning new things. It's drinking from the fire hose. It's great in so many ways because I work remotely and I work from home, and I love that I now have this co-author, essentially like somebody to brainstorm with. It's really helping me to like amplify my ideas and like think of where I might not have thought of something. Consistencies in my training where, it used to be I maybe wouldn't pick up on, there are similar topics in different trainings. I can kind of upload stuff and find those consistencies and make sure that our learners are, getting those same messages repeated, because obviously, reminders, review, practice, all that is really important. And I think sometimes when you're the trainer, you're looking at everything from such a different perspective. You're in it all day. So to you, you're like, you don't need to remind people about this. But, when they're only hearing it once a month or once a quarter, it's really important for them to get those same consistent messages. So I really just love digging into it. I love that it makes my work more efficient. Like, I don't have to do all of the heavy lifting anymore. I can take a whole bunch of books that I really like and take those PDFs and upload them into a model and draw an outline out of them. So the amount of training that we're able to roll out is just so much more, so much faster. So that's been really cool. And then just for myself, like I'm not a coder. I didn't go to school for engineering, but the fact that I can come up with really creative ideas, and then use AI to help me put the code together to, go into different, tools, and then to have reminders and stuff automated is also awesome. So there's just so much, and there's like really cool tools like Gather Round and Kahoot, and just so many of them are doing really great things with it, to make the lift easier. But then it's like so exciting because there's so much more you want to do every day.
Absolutely. Like again, especially for curious people like yourself, uh, you can really just get lost into, so many things that you could do right now, right? And you mentioned about like, hey, you can upload all this, let's say, books, and I can create content, I can do certain things faster. But I wanted to ask you this question: what are a few things that you immediately could say, I stopped doing and I don't need to do anymore as an L&D professional, and you can completely outsource it to, let's say, AI?
Sure. So, an example I can think of is for essentially like teaching another language, right? So this is something I'm and this is really something I'm doing personally, but I think it's a really good example to use here. Is I was an exchange student in France, and I learned French the way that you learn it in school, right? Numbers, colors, the boy, the girl, the teacher. But I want to have more like conversational phrases and like going out at night phrases and stuff. And so basically I was able to develop a kind of project and a task where it's every week I want to learn 5 new fun French phrases that I could, say to somebody, and they would be like, "Oh, like how does she know that phrase?" I use ChatGPT for this project, and it's basically every Wednesday drop me 5 phrases, with the phrases also write it out phonetically for me, and then give me a link so that I can listen on Google Translate to how it actually is said, and come up with like a couple like hashtags, come up with a couple like captions if I was, going out partying in France or something and wanted to put a picture up. And then every day for a week, remind me of these phrases, drop them again. And so there's that reminder piece of it. And then there's a quiz. So once a week, it has an actual quiz where it'll be like, this is the scenario. Which one of these phrases matches this scenario? And then I, do it. I have the answers there and I can test myself. And then I let the chatbot know, yeah, I got like 5 out of 5 this week. And then it's like, great, congratulations. Tomorrow you're going to get your 5 new phrases. And then every week, though, the old phrases are still incorporated with the new phrases. So I'm reminded of what I've already learned while I'm learning those new phrases. And I don't have to do any of the, let me think of a phrase I want to know how to say in French. It's coming up with all those, but I've given it enough information and it knows me well enough to know like what I would want to say, that it's very spot on. But I think that can translate into anything you want to learn at work, right? And the fact that we can set it up to do these reminders and give it sort of the context of like, this is what I want to learn. This is why I want to learn it. This is, who you should think of me as the persona. And then it can come up with the quizzes, it can come up with the phrases or whatever those important things are that you want to learn. So, it's just been really, really fun to get into that. But then I could see how I could translate that into something that I could then have, people get a message on Slack once a week and a quiz on Slack once a week and stuff like that.
I love that. So you started with the personal project first, tested the water, and you become the guinea pig.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, from like that AI perspective, I've probably been working with AI 5 years or so. The first time I was really like getting involved with it was at a healthcare company where they were leveraging AI for MRIs and X-rays and stuff. So essentially, we did this person's X-ray, compare it to all the other X-rays you have in your memory, and give us, with 90% confidence, like what you think the problem is here. And that just blew me away that technology was even there. And this is 2021, right? So that's when I was exposed to it. And at that company, we made an AI academy where we did essentially like hackathons, but around AI. So like, here's this use case that we're using it for around X-rays and MRIs. Like, what other use cases could you think of it for? And we had people from all over the organization in this cohort, so that they were able to get really creative, right? So it wasn't just engineers or wasn't just doctors, but it was people across the board coming up with really creative uses for it. And that was my first sort of professional exposure. But then with trying to like dig in and learn it, I think it's so much easier to do it from like what am I personally interested in, and then playing around. And then it's like, okay, how do I take what I've learned from that personal perspective and now put it with a work focus? How do I leverage this at work? And so it makes it more fun, I think, than just, oh, let me, do another repeatable task with AI for work. But it's like, okay, I've figured out some, and then you also see the blind spots, right? Like
Hmm.
hallucinations and stuff like that blow my mind because we all think AI has all the answers. And I was at a conference for a learning management system, and one of the activities they had us do was just drop into any one of the AI bots a picture of yourself and say, imagine me in a more professional, portrait for like a LinkedIn. And I did that, and when it generated the picture, it more or less looked like me, a little bit like heavier makeup, but then there was literally like a man's picture above my head, right? And I'm like, what is like who? And I didn't recognize the guy. So it wasn't like it went through pictures on my phone and like found this man. And I was just like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? And I literally wrote, like, who is the man above my head? And it literally said to me, there's no man above your head. It's a picture of a girl in a black top with, pearls and whatever. And that kind of blew my mind because it was the first time I saw that like AI isn't perfect. And
Hmm.
that was like a fun experience, but it really, I think, made the stickiness of it's such a great tool, and it's getting better and better every day, and it's coming at us faster and faster every day. But it's like trust but also verify, right? Like that human
Hmm.
element is still so critically important because there are times it's just flat out wrong. And again, seeing it in like those kind of fun scenarios makes it be like, all right, I can use this for work. But again, it's like that amplifier. It's not a replacement. Like I still need to use my brain and my emotions in like everything I'm doing.
You covered a lot of great things, but I want to start with this. Leaders sometimes have wrong expectations because they never get their hands dirty. So they say, "Hey, I bought this AI, got tons of amazing reviews on G2. People, rave about it. So I'm gonna plug it in. Everything's gonna be fine." But the same thing that you mentioned, if you try it yourself, hallucination is one of those things that you notice right away. It gives you very, professional answers very confidently, and just ask a simple question: "Are you sure about that?" "Oh, you are right. It seems like I made a mistake here." It's just, okay. So we definitely need that, again, human intervention here. It's not that we completely outsource the whole thing. And plus, I think what it does is when you get your hands dirty as a leader, you can see the value firsthand before giving any tool or any new processes to your end users. How do we even expect them to actually, trusting the process, go about it when we cannot even communicate the message of how valuable, this thing might be? Now, let me ask you this. Hallucination is one thing. Really assessing the efficacy of practices is one thing. But I think one of the things that we don't talk about is the fact that you can train people on how to use the platforms, but you cannot train them on building a mindset. Like, I don't believe that you can simply come and say, "Hey, your mindset should shift. Right now, you should be curious. Now you have to." How do you help building this mindset internally for your end user to pay attention to what you discovered?
It's a great question. And it's hard, and I agree with you. For some people, it's more just natural and like part of who they are compared to other folks. I think it's giving them that guidance, letting them take it as slow and steady as they want, right? Some people are going to jump in and just like absorb it all and have that mindset. And some people are going to be much more apprehensive. I think something that I've seen at work is people feeling like it's cheating in a way. And it's like, no, you're allowed to use these tools, right? Like we're telling you which tools you can use. We're making sure that they're secure, and everything from like an IT perspective is okay. But I think some people just have like a personal, almost like guilt about it, right?
Hmm.
And I think, if we think back, it's almost like when using a like really early day kind of like word processing, the early versions of Word. And then you'd have like spell check and grammar check. And then it would even like start to give you like stylistically, like the little, remember the
Hmm.
Microsoft paperclip would be like, hey, maybe you want to rephrase it this way. That's almost like early, right? AI in a way. And nobody was like, oh, that's cheating because it's helping me to like spell things better. And so
Hmm.
I think it's trying to get people like, this is that next big cultural shift, right? Like, and like the internet was a big one too, right? We didn't have the internet when we had Word processing and stuff like that. But then it was like, am I cheating by not going to the library and by like looking up all this stuff? And it's like, well, as long as it's like a valid, verified, trusted source, like you can
Hmm.
use that information. And so I think it's just getting people to think about all these other like huge technical jumps that we've made, and like it wasn't cheating then, it's not cheating now, but again, that human part has to stay in it, right? So again, trust but verify. Like that's the thing I just keep telling people. When it's wrong, let it know it's wrong, so that it doesn't make that same mistake again in the future, because you're in charge of it, right? Like at the end of the day, we think of it as almost that we're interacting with another human, but it's not a human, it's a computer. So you have to say, no, like you didn't read that website, because I can tell from your answer you didn't read the website. And then it'll say, actually, Jen, you're right, I didn't read the website, I couldn't open it. And that's how you kind of like learn these things. So I think there's always going to be those more like just kind of early adapters, the people who are curious and are digging in both at work and at home. But I think for the other people that maybe aren't as excited, it's getting them to understand that, like, first off, it's not going away, right?
Hmm.
So you may as well get on board today, because otherwise the train's leaving the station and you don't want to be out of the loop on this revolution. But then I think it's just giving people the confidence of like, you've been in similar situations like this before, where you've had to pick up something new and you've had to learn how to trust it, and you've had to learn how to break it, right? GPS is a great example. You're
Hmm.
approaching a lake or something. There's a great episode of The Office with Michael Scott where he's listening to the GPS, and it's like, make a right turn, and there's like a lake right there, and Dwight's like, no, Michael, like past the lake, make the right turn. He's like, no, it's saying make a right turn here. And it's like, that's like a good example of like trust but verify, right? Like if it
Hmm.
doesn't make common sense, and if you're the smart person who's an expert in this realm and it doesn't seem correct to you, challenge it, right? And so I think it's giving people that information, because not everyone even knows to challenge it. Not everyone knows that it has hallucinations and blind spots and stuff like that. um and I think just as an organization, it's like it has to be top down, where the leaders are saying, this is new, we're flying by the seat of our pants, we might make some mistakes, that's okay, but we can't be slow and wait to learn it and to learn all the nuances, because then we're going to be behind. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely, and that was a great example with GPS. Funny, but that's true. You need to trust, so you don't end up being irrelevant, I would say, like at this
Yeah.
point. But you need to verify for sure. Now, look, you mentioned something, two actually very important, points. You said people basically judge using AI, like saying, "Hey, your posts are AI generated. We notice you're using it. So what? So
Right.
what? If it's a standard, if it's relevant, and if the person who's sharing is capable of continuing the conversation in any shape or form." Just an example for LinkedIn, for example.
Yeah.
Why are we vilifying it? That controversy itself, I think, make things really difficult for especially people who are not necessarily early adopters or don't care much, because people have different personalities. And I think part of this shift should top down inside an organization. And also we should all influence it if we have a voice by saying this is fine. And I remember early days when ChatGPT, just been publicly accessible and became the sensation. We saw some really crazy news around like schools banning it, and you're gonna get banned, you're gonna get fired. All this stupidity will go away for sure because you cannot stop it. But then I wanted to ask you this question, because the fact that you have legal background as well. How should we ensure compliancy while making sure that we don't lose the speed? Because there's so many tools right now available, and anyone like our end users or leaders can literally get access to it, or try to be that early adopter that we want that mindset. But how do we balance that between, again, being compliant and fast?
Yeah. So I think it's definitely behooves any organization, right, to make sure that their people know what tools are appropriate, what tools are available enterprise wide. You have to use your work email address to log into this,
Hmm.
so that we're keeping those guardrails on. It's definitely important for, I think, like IT security teams to make sure that that information is front and center and that it's repeated. And if something looks AI generated, it's like, okay, what tools did you use for this? And then not necessarily punishing someone if they,
Hmm.
use the wrong tool, let's call it, but saying, okay, for something like this kind of task, this is the tool you should be using, right? So really giving people those best practices around what tool is for what use, and what tools you shouldn't be using, what tools you shouldn't be putting any proprietary information in. And so I think that's really, really important for organizations now. And it's funny, like when you were talking about like LinkedIn and about like schools saying everyone was cheating, it made me think of, I don't know if you saw any of these posts on LinkedIn, but it was about the M dash and how typically people don't use M dashes in writing. It's just grammatically something we don't, really
Hmm.
get taught to use anymore. But then all of a sudden, everyone started having all these posts on LinkedIn or, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And the M dash all of a sudden was like this new punctuation and then it was like, that's the red flag. Somebody is using AI if there's an M dash. And I remember I wasn't even aware of it until I started seeing
Yeah.
like all these posts about it. But to your point, it's like, well, if it's my voice, if it's my, thoughts and content, but I'm just using AI to polish it, like, why should you care? Like, it actually looks and
Hmm.
sounds better and it's grammatically correct now compared to, I may have used a comma in that place. Now we're all well aware of M dashes. And that's not something a year ago. If you would have said something to me about an M dash, I'd be like, what's an M dash? And so, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that's coming out of it. And it's funny even because you can say to it now, right? Anything you generate for me, don't have an M dash in, because you're worried that people are going to be like, you used AI for that. So it's funny how all that kind of goes full circle. I think it's really just making sure that like any strict uses of it are really understood, especially for people who have like proprietary code access or something.
Yeah.
You don't want them dropping that into something where all of a sudden it's part of like the world's domain and other people can see into it. But I think for other things like personal use, don't worry about if people think you're using it. Like, everyone's using it. And if they're not, they're, going to be behind.
And honestly, like I always tell my team, whoever judges you, just ignore.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, 90% of those who judge you, they do nothing. They're just snipers sitting in the back. They're ready to do. And look, you're in L&D and you know how it goes. You have a training, session. Some people, whatever you say, even you drop gold, give reality check, they're gonna disagree, and that's fine. That's just the world, and that's how it is. Let's just
Yeah.
accept it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's Goldilocks, right? The room is too cold, the room is too hot. Like, you're never going to appeal to everybody. But I do think that AI, especially like when you use it just to polish, right?
Yeah.
It really can make a difference in even just like the tone of the voice, right? Like, maybe you sound too formal and this is a situation where you want to be friendlier. You can say, this is what I want to get across. Can you help me make it, a little bit friendly or a little bit, more engaging or something? And then I think as far as like, legal ramifications and stuff like that, I think it's great as far as like, I've uploaded personal contracts. I'm on like our HOA, and I've uploaded like our declaration for our HOA. I don't want to read a
Mm,
120-page HOA
of course.
declaration, but it's like, hey, read this, summarize it, let me know the really, really important takeaways that I need.
Mm.
And so it's like, I could still be an active member of the HOA, but I don't have to, read that entire document to do it. I can have AI do that and just, summarize it for me. So you could do a lot more in your day, right? Like the 24 hours that we have becomes, I think, 40 hours, because stuff that would take us that amount of time is now off our plate.
Hmm. Look, this is a really good point that we can do our jobs much easier. Oh, things we couldn't even do humanly. To your point, I wouldn't sit down and go through an HA like 100 page to
Yeah.
do what exactly. But we still need to verify, and I think having an expert opinion matters then. And that's how I always say it. Like someone told me, "Hey, legal advisors." They're going to be irrelevant because I do chat GPT. I was like, just imagine if that draft that you're sending out to someone will cost you millions. Would you risk it? Or maybe advisors are being, leveraged differently right now. Maybe you have your drafts ready and go, book your consulting session and get a reality check on what you're dealing with, because you are not a lawyer yourself. And
Right.
although you can prompt it, you're not going to be able to learn how to be a lawyer, right? It's the same thing. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With SellMeThisPen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at SellMeThisPen.ai. Now I want to talk about L&D. What's really changing about L&D as a profession, and what do you think we need to do to stay relevant moving forward? Because I think just building training materials won't cut it anymore.
Absolutely agree. I think the human element of L&D is critical, especially when we think about and I hate the term soft skills, but when we think about soft skills, right? When we think about management and leadership and emotional intelligence and all that kind of stuff, right? You're not going to build trust through an AI bot, right? Like we have to build trust with one another. And so I think that just using AI, and I see this a lot in the space right now. It's like, hey, we have another AI tool. Like you're going to cut down on how much time you need to, design content. Um, I think e-learning is becoming more like irrelevant. I think it has to be that interactive, like kinesthetic learning where you have these tools that are coaching people and it's very engaging, right? And I think that AI can do a lot around that, right? So like let's do a practice scenario. I have to deliver a performance improvement plan and I put that information now, like what are the challenges that this person could give me? And so I think from an AI perspective, there's a lot of coaching that can and will be taking place, and people can do it in a very confidential setting. They don't have to necessarily come to me as a learning leader and say, hey, can you role play some of these conversations with me? They can just go into these tools and do that stuff and get the feedback, and it's in real time and it's timely, right? Like I have to have this conversation today. Jen has no availability to talk to me. I can do this. So I think it's again teaching people how to use the tools for those situations, right? I might not always be available, but record yourself doing a presentation, upload it into a tool and get feedback from it. Are you saying 14,000 times in that, right? Like there are different tools that can help you improve all your different skills. And so I think from an L&D perspective, it's again making sure that human element is still involved and everything isn't just like, here, watch this e-learning, because we know people watch them on like 2 times speed and barely retain anything because they're still working while they're listening to them. But then it's teaching them how to use like all the different tools we have. And then it's, when is it important again to like remove the AI piece of it and just to be a human and to be in the room with that person and to have your camera on, right? So I think from an L&D perspective, yes, it helps speed up the amount of content we could do and, documents and all that we can have. But I think it's really important that we're training people how to use it properly and about those guardrails and reinforcing all of that. And then I think it's really imperative for L&D professionals to stay on top of like what's new, what are the right tools, right? What's the better tool for infographics, stuff like that, so that you're using the right tool for the need that you have. And then you can input that into essentially like your training, right? So I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm trying to like learn how to code using AI. So I'm not actually learning how to code, but I'm using AI to help me write code that I can use for things like reminders. So, you use onboarding earlier rather than having to put together an email campaign for somebody's first 90 days. I can utilize like all the documents I have, say, all right, put together a 90-day plan. This person's in this region. This is what their role is. So if they're an IC or a manager, they're going to get different sort of reminders and prompts. But And then in that, you can also embed. And then these are our AI tools. And this is how you should be using all the different tools you have access to. So I think it's just really getting creative and figuring out what's that next thing and like challenging AI. Like, I want to do this. I have this idea. How do I do it?
Hmm.
Because I don't know how to code, but you know how to code. So
Hmm.
help me make these Slack reminders, help me get these email reminders, and it should be specific to the person in their region, in their role, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's just really being as creative as you can now. It's not just about being an instructional designer or facilitator, and it's teaching your people how to use all these tools.
Hmm. No, this is really interesting. And to your point, you're gonna own, managing these tools at some point. If it makes your, life easier and it's relevant to your seat, I think this is something that you potentially will be in charge of. Like, again, Iron Man suit. This is Iron Man suit for an L&D. You had a great example. Thanks for the ads, by the way. You can role play Git coaching like what you can do with our platform. Shameless plug, I would say.
Yeah,
But
hey.
this, I wanted to get into onboarding because you mentioned, I know a lot of our audience are interested in, learning new ways of doing things. You mentioned 30, 90 days. So 30, 60, 90 plan for onboarding. What have you changed since you got more hands-on with AI for your sales team? And what is it that you're working on for the future to implement?
Sure. So again, having those really specific kind of like onboarding plans, learning plans, right? And it's all automated and it's all current. So as far as having to go through and change maybe like a naming convention of something, right? It has all the real-time documents and information. So when sort of those emails or those Slack messages are going out, everything is up to date. And like I said, everything is really personalized, the person's name to their region, to their role, and making sure it's right and appropriate for their level. So if you're an executive, you're not getting the same thing as somebody who's early in career. And I think what that does is it gives a level of credibility to the information
Hmm.
that they're getting, because they don't feel like, oh, this is irrelevant to me or this is above my head. It's like, no, this feels like right, because the AI knows who to give what information to.
Hmm.
So I think it's very helpful from that. And then, like I said, I've been doing these sort of like 90-day onboarding plans for years now, probably since I started my career in this space. Let's call it 15 years ago, but it's probably 20. And every time there would be a change to something, you'd have to manually figure that out. And sometimes you'd miss stuff, right? And somebody would say,
Hmm.
hey, I clicked on this link. This information seems outdated or irrelevant or whatever. And then you'd have to fix it. Now with AI, it has all the up to date documents, it has all the up to date links. So it is in real time kind of doing all that. Maintenance, housekeeping, if you will, which I think is great. And then even as far as people like moving up the ranks, it's like, okay, we have somebody who's just moved into management. Well, we don't have to wait, 4 months to do a report and figure out who's moved into
Hmm.
management and who has to go into this training. It's like we know just in time who it is. They're going to start getting that content, right? They're going to start getting added to the right distribution lists and things like that. So I think from a housekeeping perspective and like the maintenance and administration of onboarding programs, upskilling programs, really anything, it makes life so much easier and you can have more confidence that they're getting the right information and it's not outdated or anything. And I think that's a big headache in the whole onboarding enablement world is I came across this document, it references something that I don't know what it is. And then you're like, oh, we missed a document. Now we have to go update that document, right? Um,
Hmm.
so I think that that's a very helpful part of it, right? So like even if like a tool changes names, so it used to be called Apple, now it's Pear. AI is going to be able to fix that for you across all the documents, all the platforms, all the email blasts. And so I think that helps with the credibility and the reliability that everyone can give to your onboarding plan or anything else, which is really great, right? Because it's kind of like one fumble. And I feel like people can quickly dismiss L&D or onboarding. And there are, again, those people who are looking to pick something out, right? This is wrong. Do you know you sent something out with something wrong in it? And then they can, consider all your stuff to not be credible. So I think it just helps everyone's confidence because you're like, okay, AI is helping in the background and I'm not going to end up with the wrong information or outdated information.
I really like that. So relevancy from day one. So when you get different personas inside your organization, you automatically can be, again, targeted with content relevant to you rather than something generic. That bugged me so much. And I
Yeah.
always like voice of it enablement. It's like, I know objection handling 101. So
Right.
can we give something that I can apply to my work? But it seems like, again, in terms of having relevant content and also building data hygiene moving forward with those updates is something that you see. You mentioned about having this academy around AI, and I think one of the things that many companies are trying to do right now is during even that onboarding, very early on, start educating about like AI. What's the difference between LLMs or different tools that are available, et cetera, to build that muscle for them and say, hey, this is a company that is AI driven. We are implementing this. This is part of our transformation, and you are part of this too. So it started from day one. Is this something that you guys are rolling out too, like training people on AI in general, or you have a different approach?
Yeah, so we actually have an AI kind of accelerator cohort group,
Nice.
and people had to apply to be in it. So it's people who are legitimately interested in it,
No.
right? Like nobody's arm was twisted to be in it. And it is an additional sort of responsibility that you have to take on. There's like homework and group activities and stuff. But these are essentially going to be the champions of AI within the organization. So everyone that was put into it, it's from all over the organization. It's again not just engineers or not just product people, but like I'm in it. And so it's like I can then weave what we're talking about into all the training, all the onboarding, all the other things that I'm doing to help saturate it across the organization. And then everyone's able to look at it from their role, but then also, I'm not in this role, but I have an idea for you guys over here and how you can be using it. Or, when I think about my training, and I'm, giving people ways of using it, I don't know product as well. So how would the product people recommend that I like incorporate it? It's all that stuff about here are our champions and then they're going to be the ones that are really pushing this out. And it's even training like your own managers, right? Like this is one of those situations where I think it's really cool because you can have some really junior people who are really into AI and who are in an AI accelerator kind of cohort and champion role. And they can teach their manager, like, hey, did you know that we could do this? Did you know that there are
Hmm.
firm wide, gems available where we can use our company brand voice and we don't have to necessarily manually write up the emails, or we can take the AI transcription from Zoom, drop it into something like a gem or any of the kind of chatbots, and it can come up with like a project plan and then an email that you can send to your client. So like there's so many really cool ways to like virally get people to learn about it, and you just have to have like those champions that like are understanding it, are interested in it. I think that part of it's really important. If somebody isn't interested, like don't try and get them to be interested. But eventually they're
Hmm.
going to realize like they're falling behind the eight ball by not getting on board with all of it. And then it's just all about, right, like that safe AI adoption, the ethical guardrails, and then using AI as that creative partner to be more efficient. It's, building confidence, but not like dependence. Like you still have to use your brain. And if a client asks you a question, you can't be like, hold on, let me ask ChatGPT that. But I think it's a good way to get the excitement, and then you also can have other people like present to the company, right? Like at an all hands or something. It's like not just the head of AI presenting every time, but hey, we're going to hear from somebody in the AI accelerator group and they're going to teach us how to, use gather round or Kahoot and make a quiz or something. So I think there's a lot that can be done by having like these champions. And it's funny, like now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't think of the analogy before, but it's like going back maybe 10, 20 years before like diversity was a big thing. And a lot of companies would have like diversity champions, and it would be a cohort that would come together, and then they would talk about like, okay, we're hiring a new person, let's make sure we're looking at like a diverse candidate pool and all that. And
Hmm.
it's almost like the champions for AI now are doing that same thing with, okay, we're interviewing, right? And that's like even a great example. We're interviewing for a role. Let's not just use the same 20 questions that we've been using, but let's use AI to help us come up with questions that align with our values, questions that align with how are you adopting AI and leveraging it, right? So I think it's really important to have those champions within any organization, and making sure the champions are very well aware of the guardrails, the approved tools, things like
Mhm.
that.
I love this. And what you said about, again, diversity could really be applied to this, because this is still something new. Everybody
Yeah.
talks about it, is that it's, infancies, at least when it comes to adoption and actual usage. I wanted to ask my last question on this, and then we do some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Um, in terms of choosing the right champion, I'm 100% with you. It could be the best, tool or process in the world. You can have the buy-in from the, senior executive team. You can train your managers. If you don't have that end user, championship internally, it's really, really a difficult job to get people in the front doing the same job to really trust it and give it a shot. Now, just imagine we have the right candidate for this. We have the right champion. How can we help them? How can we enable them to continuously voice what they learn and champion it moving forward, rather than reactively when they find something and speak about it? Maybe there is no way, but I wanted to hear your experience. Have you ever done a champion even program that sort of like incentivize them about the things they care? When I say uh, incentivize, that doesn't necessarily mean, hey, you get paid for it,
Right.
but it could even emotionally pump them, say, hey, I'm teaching people, because some people love that. But have you ever done any intentional programming around this to help champion consistently talk about, let's say, a tool or a process?
Yeah. So I think with that, it's definitely right. The incentivizing part of it can be hard, but it's finding who are those people like me where they're playing around with it like all day,
Mm,
all night for personal uses, right? Because they're already like energetic and enthused, and they're already a champion. I think the important part is finding those people that are legitimately enthused and are like excited to learn more. And definitely, I'm an L&D person. I'm someone who I consider myself a lifelong learner. Like, I don't want to get stale, right? And so I think there are a lot of people out there that aren't
mm,
necessarily in L&D but have that same outlook. And so it's finding those people who aren't looking at it like this is homework, or like, oh, this is an
yeah.
added responsibility. It's finding the people who are like super amped up and are like, I would happily work an extra 5 hours a week to be part of this group. And then I think there are special things you could do, right? The visibility, like I said, at things like all hands. Maybe there's someone really, junior who typically would not present at an all hands. Now they get to present at all hands. Now they're having visibility. Now they're seen as an expert in a certain area,
Hmm.
that people in the organization can come to for stuff, right? It's building like your own portfolio of experiences, even just like this, right? Like getting on a podcast. Like, all right, I've never
Hmm.
done this before, but now I've done it, and now I could do it again. But if you never do it, then you never know, right? And so I think that's kind of what it is with AI, is finding those people who are super excited, who don't look at it as like homework, or like, oh, I'm not getting paid extra for this.
No.
Like, that's not the mindset you want for this. And then the people who want to make sure that as you're training the models, that they're getting the right information. So, right, like it's really important for me to know that the information people within my organization are putting into the models
Hmm.
is up to date, is accurate, is, the right tool for the right reason. And if it's not, that can really screw things up, right?
Yep.
So I think that's also where some of the energy comes around it. And then it's just like, partnering with people outside of your normal working relationships. Like, I get to work with people across the entire organization
Hmm.
in the champion program, and learn from one another. And like, we all have blind spots, right? And so it's like, okay, I didn't even know that you could use it for, coding and debugging and stuff like that, because that doesn't impact my world. And people are like, oh, you can use it for presentation, like talking points. Like, I didn't know that you could do that. So we all get to like learn from each other, like really cool uses that are outside of our sort of siloed niche role.
Hmm.
And then, you can incentivize people by being like, hey, let's have like an offsite for the AI, champions, or let's give them some extra swag or something. Like there's always fun ways to keep people like excited. Here's like an Uber Eats gift card for like a lunch and learn. But I think it's got to be the right group of people. And I think having an application process or something helps get to that right group. Have them fill out a form. What is your interest? What is your area of expertise? What do you want to learn? How could you see leveraging AI within an organization to be more like efficient? And then that's how you get that like a diverse group together too, right? Like that wisdom of crowds concept. So it's not everyone's an engineer, in
Yeah.
DevOps or something. I think that makes it really helpful as well.
You open a can of worm, and this is
Of
another
course.
topic, another conversation. But I want to ask this. I'm cheating. I said that was my last question, but because you mentioned this. Imagine you're working with a new tool. You have your 30, 60, 90 for implementing that tool as well. When do you get that champion involved, the end user? Do you start from day one, or you start with your leadership and managers and get them involved first, and then you bring the champion?
I think as long as you have the right guardrails on from like an IT security perspective, I would get that champion involved day one. Let them start
Mm-hmm.
kicking it around, right? Maybe it's even you get some people involved with it before you go to like leadership with it because you figure out the best use cases for it. You figure out where it
Yeah.
has weaknesses and then you can position it properly versus, hey, here's this new tool. Should we buy it or not?
Yeah.
They're not going to necessarily know, but I think having those champions pilot it, then you can come up with the pros and cons pretty quickly to then position it to leadership who may not ever use it.
I love that. All right. Amazing. Look, I know we're about time. I'm going to ask some rapid fire questions, short
Sure.
answers.
Okay, I'll try.
L- Let's go. L&D leaders will be more effective if they only.
L&D leaders will be more effective if they only never stop learning.
There we go. Yeah, continuous learning. That's what we do
Yeah.
as enablers. Instead of sell me this pen, sell me this.
Sell me this experience.
I love it. How how does your career impacted your personal development?
I think it has kept me engaged with learning lots of different things because like I'm at the forefront, right? If I get stale, I'm not employable. So that definitely gives me like that energy even on those days where maybe I don't want to learn something new to kind
Mm,
of keep it going because I have to know what's going on, right? Like I can't have some entry level person be like, why would you do it that way? Here's a better way. And that happens sometimes, right? But then it's like, okay, let's like schedule a sync, teach me all you know, and then I'll incorporate this into the next training. So I love the concept of Kaizen. That's a
mhm.
big personal value is every time I do a training, I'm redoing it again. So it's like, okay, there was a great question that somebody asked. Let me ask that question to the group, right? So it's just that continuous improvement of not just the trainings I do, but I personally try to just do everything better the next time I do it. Going for a swim. All right, let me beat what my, swim was last week. Stuff like that.
I love that. Last question. Our next guest, Emily Mayhew, been in sales leadership seat as a VP and now president of her current company. Do you have any questions for her?
Um I would be curious how they're doing like persona based learning. Um doing different models and how they're kind of having those different seller personas since she's in the sales space.
Amazing. All right. That's pretty much it. If someone wants to reach out to you, Jen, can they and how?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jen Rutsky. I believe I am the only one in the world. And yeah, happy to take any connections there and continue the conversation.
Amazing. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.